Hello and welcome to Roli Pulse, a digital initiative by Roli Books. I am Chirag Thakkar, commissioning editor at Roli Books. And in this lockdown, in the absence of books at bookstores, we at Roli have been bringing you these engaging sessions with your favorite writers, artists, entrepreneurs, sportspersons, industry leaders, journalists, among many others, via this platform, Roli Pulse. Remember, you can check out all our previous content and sessions on our YouTube channel, our IGTV, which is our Instagram handle, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. More information on forthcoming sessions too can be found on our social media handles. And if you want us to put out more such content, then show us your love. Type in your comments in the comment section below and share this with your friends, peers, and anyone you wish to. Today's discussion is on Indian cricket's greatest Test 11 of the last 5 decades or so. Joining us for this very exciting chat are Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Rajdeep Sardesai, and Jamie Alter. Dr. Shashi Tharoor is a member of parliament from Thiruvananthapuram and is the best-selling author of 20 books, both fiction and non-fiction, besides being a former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and a former Minister of State for the Human Resource Development and External Affairs Ministries in the Government of India. He's won numerous awards, including the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, a Commonwealth Writers' Prize, and the Crossword Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2019, Shashi was also awarded the Sahitya Academy Award in the category of English Nonfiction for his book An Era of Darkness, a global bestseller. Typically found asking tough questions on panels, Rajdeep Sardesai joins us as a panelist today. Rajdeep is a senior journalist, author, columnist, and news presenter with more than 30 years of experience in print and television news. He was previously at NDTV and the founder editor of IBN 18 Network with its channel CNN IBN. He is currently consulting editor with TV Today Network and anchors a flagship primetime show. Rajdeep has won several awards for journalistic excellence, including the Ramnath Goenka Award, the International Broadcasters Prize, the Asian TV Award, and the Indian Padma Shri. He's also the author of best-selling books such as 2019, How Modi Won India. And finally, we've got Jamie Alter, who's the moderator for today. Jamie is a sports writer, journalist, author, actor, who's covered multiple World Cups while working at ESPN Crick Info, Crick Buzz, and Z Group, and as sports editor at the Times of India. He's written 2 books on cricket, A History of the World Cup, published by Roli Books, and Field of Dreams, the story of D.Y. Patil Sports Stadium. In the digital space, Jamie is the face of the popular YouTube channel Fake It India, a satirical take on the Indian television setup and current affairs, and can also be seen as the lead antagonist in the Amazon Prime web series Upsource. So welcome to Roli Pulse, Shashi, Rajdeep, Jamie. I do hope you enjoy this chat. I'll just have Jamie take over from here and get us started with the discussion.
Thank you, Chirag, for that lovely introduction. We have to also add first-class cricketer to Rajdeep's tag. Is that right, Rajdeep?
That's right. Not a particularly distinguished first-class career, but yeah, averaged about 26, 27, which is, I think, roughly how good a cricketer I was, which is very, very mediocre.
So this was Oxford and Cambridge, right? Rajdeep?
That's right. This was Oxford and Cambridge, and my claim to fame is a half century on debut, 60-odd not out against Underwood in his last first-class match. And then playing Malcolm Marshall on a freezing April day, Hampshire versus University, where I would have been anywhere else but on a cricket ground that day. So that's about it. No, but my real claim is that I was part of a team that won the Rohinton Bharia, the Inter-University, Bombay University. We defeated Delhi University, and the only reason we did that is Sanjay Manjrekar scored 600s in a row. The rest of us just scored a few runs here and there, but he was our star. So that's about my claim. And then I wrote a book on cricket, Democracy's 11, which did rather well. So yeah,
which you and I have talked about, yes.
I'm a cricket aficionado, not much of a player. And it doesn't, you see, unlike politics, Shashi, cricket doesn't run in the genes. So just because my father played the game, I soon realized it wasn't good enough. That's very
Listen, nobody in my family is in politics, so clearly politics doesn't run in my genes either. But, I played weekend cricket in places like Singapore and Geneva. And one of my more obscure accomplishments for a long time, it lasted about almost 15 years, was featuring on the website of the Centre Européen de la Recherche Nucléaire for 3 appearances in their cricket records list, all of which have since been eclipsed. But I had, I think, an opening wicket partnership. I had a 6-wicket haul, which was still amongst their 10 best performances, and there was a 7th wicket partnership as well. in which I featured. And in none of those was I, very much better than mediocre, but I was good enough to hold my end up and make some runs. So you can see that weekend cricket has nothing to do with the world-class cricket tragic that I am. It was just an expression of my passion for the game.
And I will modestly bring up the rear by saying that I once took a 5-wicket haul at the Brabourne Stadium, which has hosted Test cricket. So that's the most I've ever achieved on a cricket field in a weekend match, like Mr. Tharoor said. But let's get
I always wanted to play cricket very badly, and that's exactly what I did when I grew up. Play cricket very badly.
That makes two of us. I still play on the weekends now and then, but really missing it during lockdown. But let's get straight into our discussion today. The best Indian Test 11, and we're sticking just to the Test format because I think that's the one which really binds all true cricket fans together. And I know both of you gentlemen have serious thoughts on this. Just to let our viewers know, we have kept the cutoff of the last 50 years. I know Rajdeep in particular was keen on 1971. That's the year when the great Sunil Gavaskar made his debut and in many ways changed the way we viewed Indian cricket. And I know, Mr. Tharoor, that you mentioned once before this chat that you started watching cricket in 1963. And I'm sure Rajdeep probably give or take a few years after that. So hence we've come down to this criteria. Let's waste no more time and let's get into our 11s. Mr. Tharoor, I'll start with you and the opening choices you've made.
I think on that, I doubt there'll be any quarrel because if you look at the last 50 years, it has to be Sunil Gavaskar and Veeru Sehwag. Gavaskar, Gary Sober is described as the greatest batsman he'd come across. And the two factors I'll hold up particularly, apart from all the romance of that 774 against the West Indies in 1971, which was just magnificent, which seared him in the consciousness of a generation forever, for that generation forever. One is that he really faced some of the best hostile, genuine fast bowling in the world in his time. He played against and made his runs against Holding, Croft, Garner, Roberts, Marshall, Lilly, Thompson, Pascoe. I mean, you go through the list of some of the fastest, most terrifying bowlers in the last 50 years, and Gavaskar made runs against them all. What is more, he's one of the very few Indian batsmen who's made more runs away from India in tough tours of West Indies, Australia, England. Of his contemporaries, it was often said that Gavaskar had to be the best because he's the only one who didn't have the advantage of making runs against the Indian bowling. So that was the kind of player he was. I think he just walks in as the opening batsman into the side. And then if you're looking for a partner, it has to be Sehwag because it was incredibly destructive band of cricket. And the fact that he remains the only Indian Test cricketer with 2 triple centuries. First of all, he just is a great guy to watch. So I won him in the 11 because of the excitement and drama he brings with him to the crease. But it's also because A, he makes runs, B, he makes them fast, and C, he makes them big. And those 3 are, for me, absolutely indispensable qualities at the top of the order. I doubt Rajdeep will disagree, would you?
No, I don't disagree. I think Gavaskar, of course, walks in. I mean, I think he brought more than anyone else self-respect to Indian cricket. If you look at Indian cricket 50s and 60s, there was the perception that Indians ran away from fast bowling. I think Gavaskar completely demolished that once and for all. And just not the runs that he scored, but the difficult conditions in which he made it, that remarkable 100 at Old Trafford, which he calls his best 100 in, I think, 1974, the 221 at Oval, all the runs in the West Indies. In all conditions, a century in each innings against the great Imran and Sarfaraz in Pakistan, where umpires were prone to give you LBW the moment it struck the pad. Look, Gavaskar is in a league of his own, just not for the sheer weight of runs, but also the manner in which he did it. And I think what he brought to the game, as I said, a sense of self-respect that Indians can compete with the best in the world. So he walks in to any Indian 11, I think, of any generation, not just the last 50 years. Sehwag is a more interesting choice because I think he redefined the art of opening batting. I don't think you thought of an Indian opener who would probably hit the first ball for 6. Sehwag did that and did that consistently. There are those who would say that, does Sehwag have the technique to be an opening batsman? The fact is he scored 2 triple centuries. One is against an attack that had Dale Steyn. The other is an attack that had Shoaib Akhtar. I mean, so he got runs against the fastest. He scored runs abroad in England, got runs in Australia. So I think, yeah, pretty much I would agree. And there isn't anyone else. I mean, I went through the list looking for an opening batsman in the last 50 years who could come possibly close. and I don't think anyone comes anywhere close to these two. So I would go with it, and it would be a great pairing. Gavaskar sort of nurdling and nudging his way, and then sort of before exploding, because he could explode. And then you've got Sehwag, who would sort of take the bowling on from ball one. We'd be probably 150 for no loss at lunch.
Yeah, no, it'd be fantastic. But Rajdeep, if you don't get offended, I will nitpick you on 2 points. Number one, you said we've never had an opening batsman who'd hit a six in the first over. We actually did. In 1974, we made Eknath Solkar open. And in the third ball of the first over, a test match, his scoring shot was a six.
Sure.
The British radio commentator said, this guy doesn't understand what opening batting is about. Just to say he was a number 7, so he didn't understand what opening batting was about. And
By the way, Gavaskar's also hit a six. Gavaskar's also, I think, hit a six in his first over. I think John Lever was the bowler.
Oh, I see.
I
there you
think
are.
so. It's subject to correction, but look, just
differently. And the second nitpick was actually about the fact that Sehwag never made runs in England. In 2007, he wasn't in the side for God knows why. 2011, he was injured for the first 2 test matches. They called him in for the last 2 and he made a pair.
He got runs in 2003. He got runs in 2003 when he sort of, first made the grade there. He got runs in South Africa. He was better on harder wickets, I can see.
That's right. South Africa, Australia, he was fabulous.
Yeah, but I think, that's good enough. I mean,
we're just agreeing. We're just agreeing. So it's okay.
And I think more than the stats and the sheer weight of runs these two batsmen had, the fact that both of them are the most important Indian openers in changing perceptions. Of course, Gavaskar, for all the reasons you both highlighted so well, instilling a certain belief in a generation that time, you can go out there and score runs against the best, and then being consistent. And then Sehwag, to my mind, is the opener which changed the face of opening. Forget Indian opening, the face of opening in test matches. At a time, again, you remember when he came, like Rajdeep said, people thought, yaar, ye to one day khelta hai, ye shot marega. But then, he was sent in and then he did the job. So again, really few will disagree with our choices here. Coming to number 3, again, to my mind, there again, for me, there's only one option. I won't say the name, but like to hear your views, Rajdeep.
Number 3, again, a bit of a no contest because Rahul Dravid made the slot his own for almost, almost 2 decades. So out of 5 decades, 2 decades, one batsman makes the slot his own, scores more than 12,000 test runs and scores runs all over. Shashi's point about Virender Sehwag to some extent in seaming conditions, swing conditions, he could be in trouble because of his slightly loose technique. But Dravid scored runs everywhere. In fact, averages again, I think, more outside India than he does in India, which is quite remarkable. And almost got better with time. That period from 2002 to 6, I don't think anyone in the world, including the great Tendulkar, batted better than Dravid. And he often won you matches in tough conditions, saved matches. I was looking for other number 3s, and I again really couldn't find someone who came even close to toppling Dravid. So, I think he is India's Mr. Dependable, whatever you want to call him. But I think he was someone who, again, had the tenacity to sort of play in the most difficult conditions, which is what I think a number 3 needs.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree with Rajdeep, Jamie. I would still say that the greatest innings played at number 3 in the last 50 years was not by Dravid. It was V.V.S. Lakshman's fabulous innings in Calcutta against the Australians. But despite that, Lakshman never had enough opportunities at number 3. And so it would be Dravid. And one thing, just to augment what Rajdeep has already said about his all-round, his ability on every kind of pitch and every kind of country, I think he's the most successful Indian batsman in New Zealand, which is a country we tend to sort of not think enough about. But we actually have a terrible record, with the exception of 67, 68, when we really clobbered them in all the matches. We've always had a tough time whenever the New Zealand had even a halfway decent team, partly because of the weather, partly because of the seaming conditions, partly because the pitches were fast as well. And the one guy who managed to hold his own, it seems, and 2 or 3 tours was Dravid. So, yeah, I would certainly have to agree with Rajdeep there.
Absolutely correct, Mr. Tharoor. It was in Dravid's first tour there in the 98-99 season that he got 200s in the same match there. And one of them was a big 190 odd, I believe. So absolutely. And again, like with the two names we chose for the openers, just a man it's not entirely about the stats. It's about, showing that, an Indian batsman can succeed overseas.
And Jamie, one
Yes,
more
sir.
point. We forget that
GG.
Dravid is possibly the only non-wicket keeper to take 200 catches.
Absolutely.
We sometimes forget that he was, possibly a remarkable slip fielder, and again made himself better by sheer weight by sheer practice, sheer endurance, sheer hard work. The self-belief that you spoke about Gavaskar, Dravid also brought that into his cricket. Sorry, Shashi.
No, just to say that I think you're right. I think he took that record from Gavaskar. Gavaskar was also very high up on the non-wicket keepers list of, I think, slip catches, but Dravid took it from him. Yeah.
So there we have a very, very formidable top three. Now, another tasty one, number 4. Gentlemen, does anyone want to start the?
Is this even worth discussing, boss? I think we should discuss 4 and 5 together, because 4 and 5 are very clearly going to be Tendulkar and Kohli. It depends on which order you want to put them. I would leave 4 and ask Kohli to come in at 5. I think the only 2 number 4s in the last 50 years worth discussing, and forgive me if I'm presuming here, are those 2 gentlemen. And between the 2 of them, it seems to me very clear that at least on seniority and longevity, Tendulkar gets the slot he prefers, which is number 4, and Kohli has to take 1 step lower. But there's no way you can leave out either of them. They're both number 4 players, and this is the way I would put them.
I feel a little, there's a touch of sadness that we aren't talking about Vishwanath, who, I saw play probably one of the best innings that I've seen, the Madras 97 that he scored against the West Indies, a century in Kolkata, and then again 100 in the mid-70s. But you're right. Look, Tendulkar is number 4. It's like Gavaskar. There are 2 people who you can put any team over the last century. You've got to have Tendulkar. Quite simply, just the sheer durability, the remarkable balance he showed on and off the field, the weight of runs, the way he made them. He was a genius. And Gavaskar, I think, made himself a great batsman. Tendulkar was born great. I'll give you a story, Jamie. Tendulkar's brother used to play with us. And young Tendulkar would come at the age of 9 and 10 to some of the matches. He actually hit the ball harder than all of us who were 16, 17. We were just stunned. It was as if he was made to hold a cricket bat. So he's in a league of his own. And Shashi is right. Virat Kohli replaces Vishwanath. In normal times, I would have, if this was held maybe a couple of years ago, I would have put Vishwanath at number 5. But just what Kohli has achieved as the millennial master, as I now call him, he averages 50 again. And again, the sheer, I think he's taken the game to another level with his fitness, with his self-belief, with his sheer tenacity and doggedness, along with just the range of strokes that he has now. He can destroy a bowling attack and he can grind it to dust. He can do both. And that's why I think he is, sadly, I have to leave out Vishwanath and take Kohli. I'm going to add a rider later that if this team was played outside, if the tournament was outside India, the test match was outside India, I'll tell you why I'd include Vishwanath. But for now, I'll go with Shashi. Tendulkar, Kohli, masters of the game.
Actually, Rajdeep, sorry, you were talking about
no, please.
Seeing him at the age of 9.
Yes.
I remember a New Year's Eve party on a terrace in Calcutta. I think it would have been, must have been 87, I suppose. I'm trying to remember the exact year. New Year's Eve. And Sunil Gavaskar was there. We got talking. And he said, I've just seen this 14-year-old cricketer who I'm telling you is going to be the greatest batsman in India. I said, what? He said, I'm telling you, I've just seen this fellow. Watch out for his name. It's Sachin Tendulkar. He was 14 years old. He had, of course, that schoolboy record already. But within 2 years, he was playing for India. I mean, it's just Gavaskar knows how to spot him, I guess. And it was just astonishing. And as for Kohli, when I saw him in that under-19 World Cup in Malaysia or wherever that he won, there was something about that guy. I said, this chap is going to be worth watching out for. Everything, his presence on television, his constant exhortations to his team, his catching. He didn't actually himself do all that well as far as I remember with the bat or anything else. Others did better than him in that lineup. But he was just the figure of the team. And then I followed the story of that incredible match in the Delhi Ranji Trophy thing when he was picked. I think it was his debut match or one of his very early matches when he was batting on, I've forgotten exactly how much, 40 odd.
40 odd.
Yeah, well, one went home at night and his father passed away at 3 a.m. And I heard the story from one of his teammates who said, we never expected him to come back the next morning. To our astonishment, he said, I'm not out, I've got to bat. And he batted on till 96 or 98. He got out. He apparently watched the replay. For some reason, there was a camera. He watched the replay, shook his head and said, I wasn't out, and then went to his father's funeral. And when I heard that story, I said, this guy I've got to watch out for. He's got a future. And wow, what a player he stand out to be.
No, he's remarkable. I detailed the story in my book because I spoke to him at length about it, and it sort of stuns you about the sheer commitment to the game or the obsessiveness with which he plays cricket. He seems obsessed almost with the game, and now is as fit as a Grand Slam player. I mean, he compares himself to Novak Djokovic. It's not even comparing himself to another cricketer. But you're right. I think Kohli has, in a way, taken the game to another level. By the way, at 14, Vasu Paransky also said the same. I think he was introducing Mushtaq Ali or someone to some senior cricketer to these young cricketers who had assembled for a camp. And he said, meet Sachin Tendulkar. He's the second best batsman in India at the age of 14. And that's saying, I think anyone who watched him on the Maidan knew he was special. You can go wrong. Schoolboy prodigies have gone wrong in the past. But I think he was so grounded. He knew what he wanted.
Actually, there was a contemporary of Sunil Gavaskar's who had an even greater reputation than him in college and university.
Yeah, Ramesh Nagdev.
Ramesh Nagdev, exactly.
Yeah.
So you and I have been following Bombay cricket for about...
Yes.
And he never amounted to anything, did he? I gather he ended up playing for Canada or something like that.
Yeah, he went to America or Canada. I met him many years later. But yeah, you're right. He had a great record in schools cricket. I think he's more your generation than mine.
He is my generation. And in fact, he was really, we used to watch his matches. I was in school, he was in college, but he was really, he, Solkar, that lot was spoken of in the same breath. Solkar made it, didn't. But there we are. Now, number 6,
right. So the
challenge, because here Rajdeep and I may disagree. I'm debating whether we needed another batsman in Indian conditions. I thought not. So I picked a wicketkeeper and an all-rounder at 6 and 7. And my wicketkeeper would, of course, be Dhoni. I mean, we've had some good keepers in these 50 years. And I grew up with the passion of watching Engineer Kundaran, Indrajit Singhji. There were lots of terrific keepers. But Dhoni is just a cut and shoulder. He's just a head and shoulder above all the others, simply because of the manner of his keeping. I just think, he doesn't jump at the ball. He collects so cleanly. He moves well. Those amazing flicks of his, when without looking, he knocks the bails off the stumps from a position where his back is turned to the wicket. He's also, of course, the best leader of men. I mean, it would be between Kohli and him, not Gavaskar in my view. I love Gavaskar, the player. I'm much less a fan of Gavaskar, the captain. So, Kohli, Dhoni, and possibly Kapil, who's coming next on my list, would be up fighting for the captaincy. But probably Dhoni because of that incredible coolness and all of that. And I think in a wicketkeeper, you need somebody who really reads the game well, knows the team well, stays calm and collected even when everything is going wrong. You don't see any stress on his face even when the team is losing. Just an impressive kind of guy. So I would put him in at number 6. And I think, frankly, it may, if you're assuming that all these players are playing at the peak of their careers, he was a good enough bat to bat at number 6. A man has a test double century and he has, 7 or 8 other centuries. I think he could do it.
I agree. I mean, I'm going with Dhoni at number 6. I think he's playing one slot above where he should. But I need 5 bowlers in India.
That's what I was going to suggest. Yeah,
that's the reason why I picked him. If we were playing abroad, I get in Vishwanath or Lakshman. If we were playing, let's say, on a bouncy track in Johannesburg or on a wet wicket at Lords, I would pick I would probably go with Vishwanath. If we were playing possibly in Australia, I might go for a Lakshman. But if we are playing in Indian conditions as we are, then I take Dhoni one slot ahead of where he should be. But Shashi is right. Dhoni is a very underrated keeper, particularly a stumper. And remember, we're playing in Indian conditions to 3 spinners. He was a very effective wicketkeeper to spin. I'm not sure whether I make him the captain. I would make him a captain of a one-day team. I thought in Test cricket, Dhoni allowed the game sometimes to drift.
Yeah,
I think Gavaskar was a bit unfortunate that he played in a decade where India first had to draw and then think of winning. I think if you gave Gavaskar today's cricket and today's cricketers, he would be a much more professional captain. But we can dispute that. But I think Dhoni at number 6, both for his keeping and his ability in a way to shepherd the tail, play with the tail. He's played some remarkable innings with the tailenders. And again, a cricketer who can play in different gears. He can defend when he wants, but he was a terrific attacking player when he was at his best. So we are talking of Test cricket. Dhoni at number 6. I'm only hoping that India is 400 for 3 when he comes into bat. Or 400 for 4.
So he can have a go.
With the kind of 5 batsmen that we've chosen, that's my hope. So Dhoni's come in when the bowlers are completely destroyed, and then he further annihilates them. So that's why I've chosen him at 6.
That's great, Rajdeep. I must say, I would still be a less cautious selector than you. Even abroad, I would keep Dhoni at 6, and I would just bring in a third baseman and still spinners. But we can talk about that as we get to the table.
Yeah, so of course that's number 6. Now, of course, I doubt number 7 would also be very different. India's greatest all-rounder, Kapil Dev, batting at number 7, a place where he played most of his Test cricket at that slot.
Yeah, he was mainly 7, once in a while at 8. He scored a century once at 8. But yeah, he's just the obvious choice. There isn't an all-rounder from 1971 who comes close. And even those who would swear by Vinu Mankad in the earlier generation. Of course, Mankad was a spinner, not a baseman, but he was equally indispensable. Somebody who could hold his own in the side as both batsman and bowler. Kapil also was one of the best fielders India had ever seen at that point in Test cricket. So yeah, I mean, I think there's almost nothing to debate here. Just an astonishing cricketer all around, and played some of the great innings, some of the most memorable innings of the last 50 years. That innings at Tunbridge Wells when he won the match against Zimbabwe single-handedly, 175 not out. That innings where he saved the follow-on in a Test match in England by hitting 4 sixes in a row off Eddie Hemmings. His batting was really the best you can imagine at number 7. And then as far as his bowling was concerned, superlative. I mean, we were so lucky to have somebody who could bat like him and still bowl as magnificently as he could. So, no debate.
I agree. I mean, that's the third cricketer along with Gavaskar, Tendulkar and Kapil Dev. These are the 3 cricketers I don't think anyone would debate over, Jimmy. Kapil Dev is quite remarkable in the sense that he never missed a cricket match, barring that one match he was dropped right through his career of 15, 16 years. And this is playing on Indian wickets. A fast bowler or medium fast, call him what you will, bowling 30, 35 overs, never broke down. And once, even with, took injections, I think in that 1980 Test match in Australia when he had a slight thigh injury and bowled India to victory. Quite apart from what he did in one-day cricket, of course, at Tunbridge Wells, even in Test cricket. Who else but Kapil Dev would hit Eddie Hemmings for 4 sixes to save the follow-on? I mean, that is classic Kapil Dev. Kapil Dev ka jawab nahi. I mean, I think he redefined Indian cricket like no other cricketer has. And I include Tendulkar in a way and Gavaskar here. So, just in terms of impact at that time, I think Kapil Dev, pre-satellite age, was really the cricketer of his generation. You mentioned Vinu Mankad, and if I had to choose a team from 1930 onwards, we're only choosing from 71. I would pick Mankad at 6 and Kapil Dev at 7, and I'm sorted. Then Dhoni can come or Kapil can come at 8 and Dhoni at 7. We're completely sorted. But since we're choosing post 71, Kapil Dev, just the most extraordinary cricketer I think that we've seen. And that famous story of how he was once only offered 2 chapatis when he was 17 or 18 at a camp and said, I need more, and was told, no. Why do you need more? He says, well, because I want to bowl fast. And he's told no one bowls fast in India. The fact is, even though he was not fast, he was a terrific bowler. Actually, and Jamie, this is a statistic worth looking at. I think it was about 25, 26 tests that there was a century opening partnership when Kapil Dev started his career. He had this invariably great knack of picking up one of the openers. And that's because he had a great outswinger. It's the deadliest, delivery for a bowler to have. And in Indian conditions, outstanding. I will never forget how he made Zahir Abbas look mediocre once in 79. And that takes a lot.
Absolutely. And of course, now as we get into our bowlers, we already have one very, very fine pace option. I'm guessing there's only one more pace option to come in both of your 4 and then 3 spinners. Since, just to remind our viewers, we have picked the best Indian 11 to play at home in Indian conditions against the best possible touring 11. I forgot to mention that earlier on. My apologies. Mr. Tharoor, very interesting to see which of the spinners you've gone for.
Well, we've got 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yes.
So I'm assuming I would go for 2 spinners. 3 spinners in India and 2 pacemen in the 5-person bowling lineup. And of course, Tendulkar handy with leg spin in an emergency. But in that.
And Sehwag with those off breaks.
And Sehwag with his off breaks, and for that matter, Gavaskar with his dibbly-doubly medium pace.
No. We can't go that far. Not
in India, you wouldn't need it. Anyway, Gavaskar's openly bowling for India, Rajdeep.
Yes, of course he has.
But anyway, so I would go, and this is where I'm sure we can really discuss because there will be consensus. I would pick Kumble as the leg spinner ahead of Chandrasekhar. I would pick along with him, Bishan Bedi and Venkat as the left-arm spinner and the off-spinner. I would drop Venkat for Zahir Khan abroad, but I would play Javagal Srinath ahead of Zahir Khan in India. So it would be, in other words, 8 Kumble, 9 Venkat, 10 Srinath, 11 Bedi.
I'm finally disagreeing with Shashi. At number 8, I've chosen Ramachandra Ashwin because I think Ashwin has a remarkable record, especially in India. I think fastest to 250 wickets among Indian bowlers, subject to, I could be wrong there, but remarkable record, also scored hundreds. And I think it's between Ashwin and Prasanna for the off-spinners slot. Everyone I've spoken to who's played Prasanna and Venkat says Prasanna was much the better bowler. Venkat was possibly a more all-round cricketer, great fielder, a decent batsman, but Prasanna had the loop. And I think Ashwin edges Prasanna quite simply because at 8, I get a batsman. I know we'll be 500 for 7 or 500 for 6 when he comes in. But still, I think Ashwin has, bamboozled the best of them on Indian conditions. And therefore, I'm going with Ashwin ahead of Prasanna. Tough call to make as the off-spinner. As the leg spinner, Shashi and I are on the same page. The romantic in me would love Chandrasekhar. He was the first cricketer that I would shout for at a cricket stadium. Along with Solkar, my first hero was Chandra. Whenever he came to bowl, the whole crowd would start, Chandra, bowled, that kind of frenzied atmosphere. But I think Kumble, 600 wickets, is in another league at the moment, just in his statistical, statistics and on Indian conditions. He's destroyed every team on Indian conditions, and he's a decent batsman. So 8 and 9 are my 2 spinners. And then I've gone for I go along with Shashi on Bedi. So we've agreed on everything virtually so far except Ashwin. He's chosen Venkat. I go with Bedi because I need a left-arm spinner. And he was, as smooth as silk when it came to left-arm spin. I can't think of a better left-arm spinner. And he could give me control as well. And he scored a 50 at number 11 once or 10, wherever he was. So he'd get, bit of color that you need. The 11th choice that I've made is in India, I've chosen Zahir Khan. If we were playing outside India, I would be tempted then to drop, I would certainly drop Ravi Ashwin then and add Srinath. So if we were playing abroad, I would add Srinath instead of Ravi Ashwin. I think Srinath is a grossly underrated bowler, terrific record, could have played a few more tests if Kapil Dev had retired earlier. But I've gone with Zahir Khan because I think Zahir gives variety. And Zahir was very good with the old ball. And I think in India, you might need someone who can come in the 50th over and also bowl with an older ball. So I think Shashi and I broadly have agreed, barring, I think, on the off-spinner choice.
Right. I'll tell you why I went for Venkat over Prasanna. We'll discuss Ashwin in a second. But on Prasanna, simply because Prasanna was expensive. He bought his wickets. Venkat was more economical. I've watched them both in their prime. Venkat was also in a totally different league as a fieldsman. He actually took wickets for you by converting impossible sort of deflections into catches at either slip or gully. And he was a more than decent bat. He didn't make hundreds as as you point out about Ashwin, but he did score 30s, 40s, 50s very often, and he did so against some really top-class bowling. Now, between him and Ashwin, I think what influenced me in the end was the question of why Ashwin's own contemporaries are not picking him that often. I've been a bit taken aback. I agree entirely. I'm also a man who loves statistics, and Ashwin has been the fastest to 50 wickets, 100 wickets, 150, 250, whatever. He's just been very, very quick in his progress up the ranks, and he seems always to get a few. But somehow, there have been many occasions in which Kohli has preferred various other people, not just Jadeja, but even Kuldeep Yadav, or at one occasion Karan Sharma, to Ashwin. And I keep thinking, what do these guys see he's lacking that looking at the numbers are not seeing? And that was my only hesitation. The thing about Ashwin is that I hope he really continues. But at the moment, he is seen as a liability in the field, which is not what you would say about Venkat. And he is also seen as somebody who somehow there is something there that's not quite there, and I'm not sure what it is. Now, I hope I'm wrong. Even today, I think, it's astonishing that he's not playing ODI and T20 cricket, and that Washington Sundar, who is a much lesser bowler, gets picked for the off-spinner slots. But there's something there that clearly the selectors and the Indian cricket establishment have found wanting. And I'd love to know what it is before I back him unreservedly.
No, but it's good that you and I at least differ on at least one of them. Otherwise, it would have been too much of a consensus. So
we've clearly agreed on the 12 best cricketers in India, because we've got.
That's right.
We've got the 12.
I mean, as I said, my one difference, of course, was either a Vishwanath or a Lakshman, and playing with 6 batsmen if we are going abroad, because I get one, and particularly at Johannesburg or a Lords on a sort of seaming wicket, that's where I would pick 6 batsmen. But in India, 5 batsmen, a keeper, 5 bowlers. I've chosen Zahir and Kapil Dev as my, of course, fast bowlers. But Ashwin gives me, like Venkat, Ashwin gives control. I think Ashwin would give control. If you see, he's very rarely taken to the cleaners in India. It's very different when in abroad. But in India, he's very rarely taken to the cleaners. And I just think he's like Venkat, a thinking cricketer, strategist. Venkat would again give a problem to Shashi of choosing a captain. Because you'll have another potential captain in the team. But again, I've gone for Gavaskar as my captain. I think he was the most professional cricketer, and therefore would have adjusted to Test cricket in the modern age. I think Dhoni much better in an ODI and T20, where you've got to think quickly on your feet. Test cricket, I think you need to sort of plan, strategize. Gavaskar was very good at that. So that's my 11. And Jamie, the problem is we haven't disagreed as much as we should have here.
I was just going to say, having watched this fascinating conversation, I was somewhat surprised, to be honest, about the number of, let's say, the modern players. I thought perhaps given the amount of cricket you've watched, and also the amount, the quality widely perceived being better, at least in certain eras, that we would see a bit more names. But again, when you have such
would you have chosen anyone else? Jamie, is there any name?
See, I would have, at number 5 for me, I would not have gone for Virat Kohli. Because I sort of lean towards the stats, and again, the quality of bowlers, someone like a Mohammad Azharuddin would have faced. Since we're talking about only at India, there's no, as per the runs, he scored the most runs at number 5. And when you factor in the kind of bowlers he would have faced, I think he perhaps has the edge over Virat Kohli purely in India at number 5. Now, again, that's a bit of a contentious choice given the name that I've taken. I don't have Virat Kohli in my 11. I think he has to do a bit more. Of course, he scored all those runs in Australia and in England in the last tour. But when it comes to Test cricket, he doesn't bat at 5 as often as someone like a Mohammad Azharuddin did. Of course, we have Vishwanath and many other names. But again, just to wrap, because I know we're sort of running out of time.
No, I think you make a good choice in Azhar, because he was possibly the greatest all-round fielder India produced. And was a remarkable batsman in Indian conditions, particularly when there was no bounce. On low bounce wickets, Azhar was just terrific. He could just take the ball from anywhere. So I can see where you're coming from. The reason I was, why I feel saddened about Vishwanath, and I feel saddened about that generation, since you mentioned earlier, they played without a helmet. By the time Azhar came, the helmet had more or less come into the game. It was slowly creeping into the game. Vishwanath played the world's best bowlers without a helmet. if you look at sheer pace, the 70s was the decade of pace.
Yeah.
And whenever we played the West Indies, I thought Vishwanath and and a couple of other names, Vengsarkar and Mohinder Ramanna, but much more. I mean, unfortunately, these five that we picked have such impressive statistics that it's very difficult to challenge them. I know you're mentioning Azhar over Kohli. I saw Kohli score a double century in the Wankhede against England a couple of years ago. He was terrific, and therefore he's actually made the transition from one-day cricket to Test cricket. By now, he is the complete player. A couple of years ago, I would have gone with you on Azharuddin or Vengsarkar or Amarnath or Vishwanath or Lakshman as potential alternatives to the ones we mentioned. But I think you can't not avoid a Virat Kohli anymore. And maybe he's he's also evolved as a captain.
Yeah.
So if we have this couple of years from now,
he
could be the captain.
The last couple of years.
I have to say, Azhar is a friend of mine. He's a former MP for the Congress Party, so we know each other. And I think he's a terrific, terrific player. I watched his debut match at the Eden Gardens. I'll never forget that debut century. Somebody I've had an eye on before he made it to the Test side because of his prodigious feats playing for Hyderabad in South Zone. All of that said, weighing any Indian batsman of the last 50 years against Kohli is already difficult, and I believe will be more difficult by the time he finishes his career. I think the weight of runs in diverse conditions against diverse attacks and the levels of fitness, the levels of engagement, commitment to the game.
A game changer.
Languid elegance to Azharuddin, which you'll never find in the intensity of a Kohli. I put Kohli ahead. Sorry, Rajdeep. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to throw another name, which I sort of, again, regretted missing out on, which was Kirmani. I thought he was the best keeper I saw to spin. And when you've got these three great spinners, and if I had to compare them purely as keepers, I would ideally like Dhoni and Kirmani to almost rotate as keepers. Because Kirmani was an effortless keeper, in the true great tradition of those classical Indian keepers, Tamane and others who were great to spin. Yep. And he was not a bad batsman either. Kirmani
no, you're right. But again, Dhoni edges him out because you have to consider all the factors. And
I can't take him at 6. You see, if I had a Vinu Mankad at 6, Kapil Dev at 7, then it would be a toss-up between Dhoni and Kirmani at 8.
That is how these lists go. And I think we have at least a few more episodes in such talks lined up. We will talk about the last 50 years. Like you said, Rajdeep, we can do the years, the decades before that.
Sure.
But I have to wrap up now. It's been an absolute pleasure, Shashi Tharoor, Rajdeep Sardesai, on this conversation. Thank you, and I do hope we get more chances. Maybe we can discuss one day cricket again. Sure. Thank you all for joining us on this discussion. Do follow Roli Books on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for updates on more such debates and books. And as always, believe in books. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Shashi.